All right, thank you to everyone who's here joining us today. I'm Lisa Partida with Home Again LA. Today we have Tom Fuentes with Bank of Hope, and today's presentation is going to be about your spending and savings plan. So I'll go ahead and pass it along to Tom.
Thanks, Lisa. Yep, so we have your spending and savings plan. This one is a little long and there's multiple sections, but essentially it's broken down into several sections. So in section one that we're going to discuss right now, the main takeaway is using a monthly spending and savings plan can help you guide you through the use of your money. But first, in order to understand this, we have to understand the building blocks of what a spending and savings plan is, right? So a spending and savings plan helps you compare your incomes to your expenses so that you can understand where your money is really going. Some people call it a budget, others call it a spending and savings plan. It's apples to apples. It's really the same thing. So really a spending and savings plan bring together two money topics, right? Income and expenses. So income is money that you receive, and that includes earned income, income from assets and investments, public benefits, um, in the form of gifts, child support, alimony, things like that. So it's money that you have coming in. Whereas expenses is how you use income. It could be saving, sharing, spending, meaning that it's money that you have going out of your account, right? So, in order to better understand the dynamic of how these two things exist, you would actually create a plan. So, you'll see in our first apply it section here that we have the building out or the making of a spending and savings plan. So, this is something that you can do after the workshop, after we've gone through like the key terms and definitions and things. But essentially, and I don't think we have the graph here. No, we don't. Okay. But we'll go into the details on how to fill it out. But essentially, what we're doing here is we're filling out what your net income is and your expenses. And then in the apply it section, there's going to be a comparison guide so that you can understand how this relates to the monthly amounts so that it can help you determine the outcomes. And hopefully, what we want to see is that after you compare this, there's money left over so that you can start putting money into creating a savings plan essentially. But let's talk about the three parts of how we actually build out the plan, right? So the three main sections, your net income. So net income is your income after taxes and deductions. The second part focuses on your expenses. So the third part is a comparison of your total net income and your total expenses to see if they're in alignment with each other. And by aligned, we mean, does your income cover your expenses, right? So here's how we fill it out. So first, you complete past monthly amount column in the apply it section that we had here, right? Um, Next, we complete the planned monthly amount column. So it includes space for you to write which month you're planning for because you're going to want to do this on a monthly basis. And you don't want to just copy the amounts over because you may have income and expenses coming in at different parts of the month. You also may want to group your money in different categories. Example, maybe you want to categorize savings into clumps like your emergency fund. You may want to cut or you may want to categorize your spending under things like headings like groceries and household supplies. Anyhow, the reason that we do this in that type of alignment is so that we can identify ways that we can cut out expenses. So a simple example of this would be, uh, say, streaming apps, for example. Maybe you're subscribed to Netflix, Hulu, Disney, HBO, so on and so forth. There's a whole bunch of different streaming apps. We wouldn't want to just categorize it under TV or cable or streaming. We want to break it out. And the reason that we do this in that plan that we talked about in step three, as you can see, or excuse me, in step two on the planned monthly amount, um, you want to identify things that you can cut out. Because one of the things that we always bring up in the workshops, no matter what the topic is that there's only one way to increase your, excuse me, there's only two ways to increase your income. One, you get another job or you monetize a hobby, or two, you cut expenses. So this is going to be a way for you to cut out those expenses that you identify that you don't need anymore. So now we compare. So when you compare your total net income and your expenses, you're going to see three possible outcomes, right? You're going to see the difference you calculate in the comparison of my total net income. And you're either going to get a zero, a positive, or a negative. And quite simply, zero indicates that your income equals your expenses. Sure, that's cool. But if you don't have the positive number, then that means that we don't have money to carry over to put into savings, right? So if you have a positive amount, you have more income than expenses, and then you're in an opportunity where you can actually build out a savings plan, or excuse me, not a savings, yeah, like a savings plan where you identify, okay, I'm now going to put this amount of money into an emergency fund. I'm going to put this amount of money into a savings account, so on and so forth. And then if you end up with a negative number, that ends up meaning that you have more expenses than income. And this is where you're going to have not enough money to cover your expenses, which is the stressful part about when we're creating these tables and everything. Again, so in the participant guide, we have a situation with Shelly and Walter, and they're creating their spending and savings plan. So you can do this after the workshop, but essentially, we're doing you've done it yourself in the first try it section where we're laying out your stuff, items, and then this one we're going to record their items, so that we can better identify their spending, so that we can create a plan for them as well. Um, Things like this, and I don't think, no, we don't have it, but things like this are going to be identified, and we kind of already talked about it, but things like um, money that you get from your job, money that you get from self-employment or a public benefit or dividends from an asset or interest and stuff like that. We're going to identify those in a list. And then we're also going to identify if there's a positive number left over, savings that can be applied to different categories as well. We kind of already talked about that. Anyway, but on the second part of this apply is going to be a daily record you're saving, sharing, and spending. And you can essentially create this out based on your ultimate plan, right? So let's get into the daily ideas. So daily and weekly ideas. So recording, saving, sharing, and spending. So saving your receipts is a first step that would allow you to do this. In addition to using receipts to track uses of income, you can use them to check debit and credit card statements as well. When we use account statements in this way, you can go to the debit category to see the expenses that's coming out of your checking account linked to your debit card or your credit card as well. Um, uh, and then other ideas too, as far as weekly ideas would be is like the envelope system, putting limits on spending using envelopes. So what you do is you label the envelope with a category, right? Of the type of spending that goes into that, and then you limit it for something. So you could have an envelope that says groceries and household supplies. You could have an envelope that says eating out or takeout, for example. And the money that you put in there is the only money that you use for that category. So you can do that too. It's important though, as we move out from the daily and weekly ideas, and knowing that when we're creating that spending and savings plan, it needs to represent like a full month, right? So you can estimate weekly amounts based on the inputs that you put in the participant guide when you're filling out your spending plan. Okay. You can establish weekly money check-ins as well, where you can gather up the people in your household together during dinner, for example, and you can talk about money that you spent in certain categories and identify in like a brainstorming session things to cut out. I sometimes do this with my wife when we're eating dinner, and we talk about our day, and we talk about different bills and stuff like that. And in fact, in a conversation that we had just like a month ago, in this kind of like weekly money check-in, even though we don't have anything set on a schedule, but we started talking, she brought up like, do you realize how much we're paying in car insurance? And I was like, I had no idea because it's automatically debited from the account. So we ended up having a conversation about this, and it ended up saving us money because we ended up switching. And Yeah, so just have a conversation with people in the house to identify ways to cut back too. You also can conduct monthly reviews too, right? So not only can you review your receipts or review your statements, right? Um, there's other ways that you can do it, but the idea of this is that we think about it in a time-bound manner, daily, weekly, and then monthly. And the reason that we do it on a time-bound manner is you can see when we get to the monthly ideas, we can actually start setting like monthly goals for ourselves. And then it also helps prepare for when tax time come around. We just went through it right now, right? April 15th was the deadline. And then through all of this and plotting out your ideas, it's important to celebrate the successes that you have along the way. Um, if you end up trimming out certain expenses that weren't required, then I would consider that uh, a time to celebrate, right? So we kind of talked about the increasing of income. There's two ways to deal with it: increase income or cut expenses, right? So you may be able to increase your income, which will help you cover more expenses and allow you to have more money in the end, right? So some activities may provide more income, one or occasionally, such as selling items in a garage sale. Some activities may provide more income on an ongoing basis, such as getting a part-time or a second job. Some activities may be long-term, maybe to devote some time before the strategy will generate income, such as participating in a local workforce development program, for example. But there are several different ways in which increasing income uh, can come about. Now, we talk about monetizing hobbies a lot. Maybe you're a great baker, and maybe you sell cupcakes or cakes on the side to supplement income to cover expenses. Maybe you're a talented cook and you have a part-time catering business on the side, something like that. Drive Uber, things like that. So there's definitely ways to increase several different ways to increase income. The other ways that we increase income is decreasing expenses. So we do the needs versus wants thing, right? So we focus on the things that we need, which are the things that we need to live, right? And then we weigh that against the things that we want. Like I want or desire to get a new pair of shoes, or I want or desire to get a car I can't afford, or something like that, right? So we focus on the needs over the wants. We kind of try to do our best to cut those wants out. Easier said than done, I would say too. And then the obligations. Consider the things that we owe in the form of debts, right? Borrowed money. I owe money on my mortgage, on my credit card, on my car loan, things like that. Um, so you can think about three strategies: conserve, adjust, do without. And the idea of conserving is what can you get cheaper or use less of? And one of the things I always talk about is not going to Target and spending $8 on Old Spice deodorant or body wash. I now will go to the dollar store and pay $1.25 on, well, whatever they have on the shelf. So that's my conserve um, strategy for myself to save a little bit of money. I guess you can also throw that into the adjust category, right? The adjust category is what you can renegotiate. But in this sense, I think what we're talking about in the sense of the longer term is that maybe you have student loans or something like that that you're paying back. You can often call your creditors to ask for renegotiations on certain things, especially if it's hard for you to make the payments. Because quite frankly, the people that we owe money to, they want their money in some form or fashion, and they're willing to work with you instead of not getting their money at all. But anyway, a renegotiation can be considered in a lot of different regards, right? And then, of course, things that we can do without. What are the things that I can eliminate? When I'm doing my spending plan, if I see for whatever reason I'm going to in and out too much, or I'm just eating out more than I should be, maybe I can do without or eliminate that altogether. So yeah, there's tons of different ways to go about it, but these are kind of like the three buckets that we talk about. And then in the spending and savings plan too, in the participant guide in this, when we go back to the scenario with Shelley and Walter. So we complete that part of the participant guide so that we can come over and now make the proper adjustments when we have identified filling out their spending and savings plan, the things that they can make adjustments on. So in this case, we have how can they increase their income? How can they decrease their expenses? So kind of as we go to the section close on this one, the whole idea of this one is by filling out this plan and having the line items in front of us, and you'll see it in the participant guide when you're filling it out. Am I in alignment? If I'm not in alignment, we go to the 3 buckets, right? Conserve, renegotiate, and eliminate. We want to make those adjustments because we hopefully want to have enough income to cover our expenses. And if we don't, then we go back and then we adjust that spendings and savings plan to meet the needs that we have at that point in time. So let's move on to when money is short. So prioritizing which bills to pay first when money is short. And it's important, right? So how does it happen? So even with careful planning, money can run short. We may not have enough money to pay for the monthly bills that we have, and we have to make adjustments to our plan. We could have medical expenses that are unexpected. We could lose a job, our hours could be cut back. God forbid, we need to replace or repair a car or a refrigerator, or there's so many different life events that can happen, but unfortunately they do. So the reason that we talk about planning is so that we can kind of be a little bit more cautious and more careful when these situations come up, right? I'd hate for us to have unexpected costs and have to use a credit card to get by in those instances, right? So when your income is less than usual or you've had an unexpected expense, your regular bills and living expenses don't stop, unfortunately, right? So when you can see that something is coming up short to pay your bills and living expenses, what do? We kind of already talked about this, right? We can increase income in several different ways. We can decrease expenses in several different ways. We kind of scratched the surface on this one when we talked about renegotiation. But the bottom line is that the people that we owe money to, they want the money. They don't want us to default or declare bankruptcy. Um, you can contact creditors about your current situation, and they may give you extra time to pay. They may renegotiate your interest rate. They may put you on a different payment plan because bottom line is they want to receive that money from you. This isn't a blanket statement. There are some organizations out there that have really bad customer service and may not want to work with you, but I've gone through this myself, and I specifically had the issue with student loans that I owed years ago. I just got into a situation where the payments were so much, and I had to call, and and thankfully they work with me. But reach out to these folks for help sometimes because you never know when you're not going to be able to make those payments, right? So anyway, so we talk about prioritization, right? Making choices about which bills to pay in full, which ones to pay partially, which ones, unfortunately, if it comes down to it, that we have to pay late. So you still need to pay your bills, of course, but the order that you pay them in you can reorganize that, right? So it's the idea of examining the consequences of not paying certain bills in full or prioritizing ones that you want to make sure that you pay on time, right? So bottom line, right? When we lay out consequences so what will prevent me from earning income, right? I'm going to make that payment uh to where I'm renting because I don't want to jeopardize my shelter. So you almost have to make a pros and cons list to help you decide how you're going to prioritize these payments, right? Um, the other thing that you need to consider when you're trying to prioritize what bills you're going to pay is how much am I going to pay in late fees? Because sometimes late fees on a credit card could cost more than late fees like on a car loan or something like that. So what you could do is you can pull out everything that you owe and see what fees are associated. Yeah. And then you can also prioritize things by um, the maybe that they'll report you to the credit bureaus, or maybe they'll increase the interest rate on your credit card, for example. Anyway, so yeah, there's several different things to consider and how to prioritize these things. Um, and in the participant guide in the apply it section for this, for section 2, you go through an exercise on how to prioritize income. So essentially what you end up getting is a list of bills and expenses, and then you indicate, and I don't think we have it laid. Let me see if we have. No, we don't have it laid out here, but I'll try to visually have you go through this so that you can fill it out in the participant guide. So basically, in the prioritization of the expenses, what you end up having is you have this graph, and what you in this example, what you have is a phone bill. Okay, so we've identified the bill or the expense, and it's the phone bill. And then we have the amount due, which is $500. We have the due date, which is January 5th, 2026. We'll say 2026, for example. And then there's a category of, did you speak to the creditor or not? Yes or no. Did you ask for help? Yes or no. And then what will happen if I don't pay this in full? If you don't pay it in full, right, you'll have late fee or service interruption or service cutoff. And then there's a prioritization number. So you'll see it when you're in the participant guide. And basically what you're doing here is you're listing out all the expenses that you have. You're listing them in dollar amount by date due, whether you've contacted them or not. And then the consequence if you pay it late or not at all. And then you prioritize these from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It'll give you a better way to prioritize what bill to pay if you fall on hard times, right? Or in another benefit too that I forgot to mention is that when you prioritize them this way too, you can also rank them by the amount of money that you owe on them in an effort to pay some of these off. So it could be like a multifaceted system in prioritizing those expenses. Okay. But yeah, so that brings us to I want to say that we're not done already because I know my spending and savings plan is a little is this one a little short? Yeah, okay, it's a little short. Let me see if I went over something too quick because I think we've been talking only for like 25 minutes.
Mhm.
But we'll stop right there if there's any questions, and then if not, we'll at least try to think of something else to talk about for a couple minutes. But yeah, this one's kind of
Right.
the short one. Um,
But it's pretty good. I'm enjoying it thus far because it's a lot of things that's hitting home right now.
yeah, and you know what? Let me bring up a real world example to this real quick too, because one of the things that we always talk about in the workshops too, independent of what the topic really is that SMART framework. It has to be
Mhm.
specific, measurable, action oriented, reachable, and
Reachable.
time bound. So one of the things is the time bound thing that I think that always gets with us. So recently, something that I've been doing is having conversations with my wife and not really creating and building out a spending and savings plan and not really even creating a budget. But one of the things that we talked about recently was, is there any way yeah, was there an ability to put away some extra money? Because when we pay our mortgage every month, we don't have an impound account. So sometimes when you have a mortgage, you pay your payment, your homeowner's insurance, and your property taxes all in one lump, which I miss that. We don't have that anymore. When we make our payment, it doesn't include property taxes. So we ended up having to pay property taxes twice in the year, separate from that monthly mortgage payment. And it always messes me up because I don't have like a formalized plan like we talked about here. And I wish we had the graph, but in the participant guide, there's an actual like graph where you're putting in your income and your expenses. But long story short of this is when I presented her this idea, the only way to really get to the bottom line of understanding how much money you'd have to pull in from your checking into a savings account that's dedicated doing your property taxes is to create a budget. And that is a task. I have to tell you, it can be absolutely daunting. It can be really um, scary to do because it takes a lot of time. But it's really the only way that you can identify the extra money necessary in order to do this. So when it comes to, I think we end up paying in March and we pay in November. But if I don't have that lump sum of money sitting in an account somewhere to pay those property taxes, then, well, there I kind of don't, it goes over section 2, right? I don't have enough money at this time to make the payment.
Mhm.
So, what you have to make a plan. So the plan that we came up with was, okay, well, we're gonna automatically transfer, I think, like $175 out of the checking account every month so that it feeds into the account. So that way, when we get the bill, we can pay it. But this is like a new thing because I'm used to making a payment where it's all lumped in. So the only way to really do this sometimes is to actually create that plan. Yeah. But anyway, so any questions that we might have for my spending and savings plan?
I don't see anything. All right. Okay. Well, I guess that'll be it for today. Thank you so much, Tom, again. We appreciate you, and we'll catch you next month.
All right. Thanks, Lisa.
Thank
I hope
you.
everyone has a good rest of the week.
You too. Bye.
Bye.